Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending where you are in the world. I haven't done a Facebook Live like this for ages. Actually, just chatting with Karen before we went live, saying I feel a bit nervous about it because I haven't done one for so long. But anyway, the exciting thing is travel is opening up. I think I switched myself off to travel for 2020 and 2021, but now we're getting into 2022, I feel like I can actually start planning. So this is a great opportunity to start chatting with our members about some of their adventures, because it really inspires us and helps us to forward plan. One of my little boo-boos that I made, so rubbish sometimes, was on Karen's website. I was getting all excited about her trips, and I mentioned about the self-drive in South Africa, but actually that was a guest post, so I got all carried away and it wasn't even her trip. But Karen has done some really exciting trips in Malawi, Tanzania and Rwanda, so we're going to be talking about those today, focusing on the Malawi trip. So Karen is from Mini Travelers. I'm sure loads of you have had a look at her website. I've actually put the link above this video, but I will also share it again. So some of the posts that we chat about today, so that you can actually have a look at them properly and follow the adventures that she's been on. But Karen does all sorts of adventures with her kids. She has 3 girls, age 11, and twins who are 10. And they've been documenting their travels for the last 6 years. So they do anything from, Disney, so more sort of mainstream holidays, to really off the beaten track travel. So I'm really happy to be chatting with Karen today, and hopefully this will inspire you for 2022. So let me add Karen in. It worked, hooray. Hello, Karen. And actually, how are you?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. It's so lovely to have you here. And before I start, I'm just going to show your book, because we're going to be chatting about this later on. Karen has 2 books out at the moment, children's fiction, but based around travel and also with an educational content. So we'll talk about that in more detail, but I will be giving this book away. So if you're watching, please just put hello in the comments and I will choose someone at random and I will post this book out to you. We'll come back to this later on. So let's talk about, now the world is opening up. And you're probably already planning for 2022. I'm sure you've got a few in the pipeline.
Yeah, we are actually off to Rome at October half term as well. So we are flying to Italy in a couple of weeks. And I'm hoping that Kenya is going to be on my list for 2022.
Oh, amazing. And actually, when I was reading through your Tanzania blog post, it brought back so many amazing memories, because I visited there 20 years ago. But I went to Ngorongoro crater and did those lakes. It's stunning, isn't it?
Yeah,
and just be able to take kids there.
Yeah, it's absolutely stunning. Yeah, we feel incredibly lucky to have been able to push ourselves, push them, and make it happen. So yeah, it's an incredible place. Incredible place.
So 2018, you did the 2 trips, is that right? Malawi and Tanzania?
No, we did Malawi in 2018, we did Rwanda in 2017, and we did Tanzania in 2019. So
one each year. Amazing.
So one each year. And we were due to do Zambia in 2020, but obviously we all know what happened.
Oh no. So from looking on your website, you have the most amazing videos as well, documenting your trips.
Thank you.
So should we talk about Malawi? Because I'm going to put a link to your video, because it's just beautiful, because it's a holiday, but also a cultural experience, isn't it? Your kids really got involved in the local communities. And I know we have a lot of chat in this group about going off and doing safaris, and it's something that a lot of people want to share with their kids. But can you just share what you did on your trip and how easy it was traveling with 3 kids?
Yeah, sure. So I think the reason that I wanted to focus on Malawi was because we had an incredible experience in Tanzania the year after, but actually we all, as a family, all preferred our Malawi trip. Now, our Tanzania trip was super swankier. We stayed in some incredible places. And I think from an adult perspective, we saw a lot more animals, and it was probably a more special safari experience. But the thing that made the best thing that we did, and the reason that we all voted Malawi as our favourite trip, was because it wasn't just safari. And actually, I think when you've got younger children and they have to sit in a safari van to go and do the safari, there really is only so much that they want to do and that they want to see. And whilst myself and my husband could probably spend 2 weeks going out every day just seeing the incredible animals, I think from the children's point of view, there needs to be a bit more about it. And that's where Malawi was such a special trip for us. So we were very lucky that we did this as a press trip in combination with Visit Malawi, but also with an amazing company called Responsible Safari, who the couple are based in the UK and they used to live in Malawi, and they have young children. And their whole emphasis is that, yes, go and do safari, but actually let's go and see some of the country as well. And let's go and explore and see what Malawi is really about, rather than just what do the fancy lodges and what are the animals all about. So our trip to Malawi was incredibly special for that reason. And we did lots of fantastic safari, but we also did trips into the local community. We spent a very long time in a church in Malawi where we were special guests. A little bit too long because the church service went on longer than usual because we were the special guests. And Jenny and I from Travel and Family, we happened to be in Malawi at the same time. I think some of you all know Jenny as well.
Yeah.
Very long time in that church, and I had to work out ways of leaving. But we were made to feel very welcome and part of the community. We went into the village and we spent some time with the villagers, and they taught us how to make corn and make bread and how they did that, and we chatted to the kids. We also took part in some amazing experiences where we did a day with the Book Bus, and the Book Bus is an amazing charity that spends time in Malawi, and they people send books over, and the Book Bus goes around to all the schools, and they read with the children. And so my children did sessions with the kids, and they sort of listened to them read and helped them with their reading and sort of signed off on their reading logs for the week. And some of those children were quite a lot older than my children, because obviously they were reading English as their second, perhaps even third language. But actually they were, my children were helping them with the books. And Lily was, I think Lily would have been 8, maybe 7, 8 at the time. And she stood up in front of the class and read out.
Oh.
And that's one of the, that was a really special day. The girls really, really enjoyed that. But the other thing that was factored into our trip to Malawi was just lots of different things. So we didn't, as I said, we didn't just do safari, but we stayed on an island, and then we stayed at the top of a mountain, and we climbed a mountain, and we did lots of different things. And the trip was just, you can tell from my voice, it was incredible.
You want to go back?
I want to go back.
Well, actually, that's for me, that's my perfect type of holiday. We've got all these different elements to it. And do you know, honestly, I hadn't ever considered Malawi. So it's lovely being able to chat with you and find out, why you loved it so much, because I know a lot of people in this group will also love it for the same reasons. And you went to a tea plantation, didn't you? And picked
tea plantations, that's right. Yeah, right at the end. So that was another completely different thing. And we stayed in in each place we stayed in was totally different as well. So different types of things. So, tents on the island, safari lodge. We stayed in an old tea plantation house at the tea plantations. We just had all of these. We stayed in a really sort of different kind of old style house at the top of the Zomba Plateau, and had a wander around there, and just met lots of different people on the way round as well. So it was, we spent a lot of time talking to people about, so in Malawi particularly, because we did this trip with the responsible travel people, we spent a lot of time talking about how people go to African countries, and sort of, a lot of things, how people come in and build a school, and and a lot of the time the locals will tell you that that's not what they need, because they, one of the things that Africa has in abundance is labour. They have people that can do that, and they don't need somebody to build a school, they might need the money in order to fund building the school, but actually, you need to have a little think about kind of what actually you're donating to, what you're trying to do, what you're being responsible for.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of politics involved in that, and there's a lot of kind of, it's quite tricky, but equally it was really interesting to have those conversations and to actually talk to the people on the ground. I mean, I remember chatting to a couple other people that we met in Malawi who owned one of the lodges right at the beginning of COVID last year, probably about 3 or 4 months in, when COVID had hit Malawi and tourism had to stop and everyone had to slow down. And they said what was really interesting for them was that actually the death numbers in Malawi at that stage hadn't actually increased at all. Now, they might actually have been dying of COVID as opposed to something else, but actually the numbers of people at that point hadn't changed. And they were struggling with the sort of lockdown and the sort of the understanding of it for those people who lived in those communities, because actually what had happened was that the money had just stopped coming into the country.
Oh yeah.
So actually deaths were going to happen for different reasons as well.
Oh, that's so bad.
It's incredibly tricky, and it's an incredibly challenging situation, but I think it's really interesting to push yourself and to listen to those conversations and to think, gosh, did I, I've done some of those things before. Did I get that wrong? Is that not how it should be when you think you're being responsible or you think you're being?
And also it opens your children's eyes, doesn't it, to life outside your own bubble. And I know you were talking in your blog about when you went to the tea plantation, explaining to them that actually these people, it's hard work picking tea because you tried it yourself and they're only earning like $1 a day. Yeah. And, that conversation about, is this fair? Are they earning enough? And all those conversations that come with travel as well.
Yeah, the tea plantations were a fascinating learning point for the kids, actually, because they could understand what $1 was, a pound. We talked about it as being a pound, really. And we then left the tea plantations and we went to a shop on the way to the airport. And the lollipops in the shop on the way to the airport were £1 each or $1 each. And none of them at that point could have one. They couldn't have one. They couldn't bring themselves to have one.
Oh, yeah.
Because they had just been on the tea plantations and understood that the people there had to work all day to earn $1. And, I'm not saying that lesson has continued,
lasted a week.
But they are very aware of that. Yeah. And they are very aware of that sort of disparity. We had some fascinating conversations in Malawi and Tanzania about Santa and why the children in the villages didn't have any presents from Santa. Did Santa not care about those children?
Wow.
And so we had to have quite an interesting conversation around the fact that, well, when you're tiny, we tell you this, but actually when you're older, that mums and dads have to send money to Santa, and there was a concept around that.
Oh, that's clever.
That was all really quite tricky, because obviously, why would he leave them out? Why would he not send them anything? Yeah. Why would he not do that? And also there was also some really interesting conversations around the fact that when we were walking around the tea plantation that we were at, it was a fair trade tea plantation, so it had achieved fair trade status. But what the owners of the tea plantation were telling us was that in order to achieve fair trade status, they had to provide accommodation on the tea plantation for all of their workers that they gave full-time contracts to. So they couldn't. So it's one of the things. But what actually happens with that is that instead of providing accommodation for everybody that works at the tea plantation, they then can only, because of the space and lots of things, or just financially, just the actual, what they do is they provide accommodation for 200 workers, and then the other workers have to walk in and can't have full-time contracts. Oh. So actually, rather than this fair trade badge or status creating an amazing level of things for the people who work at the tea plantation, what it actually seems to do in practice is create a 2-level of employees, where you have some employees who are working and get accommodation and education and healthcare, and then you get other workers who have to walk in 4 miles from the other accommodation before they start their day.
Oh, and then they don't get the hours and don't get
the hours, and they don't get the full-time status, which was again just a fascinating insight into what we in the West, I think, are trying to enforce and make, you know, and impose on people in Africa. And actually what the tea plantation owners were saying was that before this fair trade status, in lots of ways, and before that, they used to house everybody.
What a shame. I know, that's the thing. You just take it as, you know, you see the logo and you think it's fair trade, and you don't actually question what's behind it. So it's really interesting, because we don't see that, do we? So that's another interesting aspect of travel, which I do love, when you can get
exactly all these different things, and just all those conversations that, you know, that take place with the kids because of that.
And what animals did you see then on your trip to Malawi?
So Malawi was slightly different. There was hundreds of hippos, hundreds of elephants. They were just re-bringing lions into the area, but we actually didn't see them in Malawi. We saw lots of lions in Tanzania. In fact, I'm just going to cheekily talk about my Tanzania trip at this point, but we stayed in this amazing tent in the Serengeti. Again, very, very lucky. We were hosted by Elawana in the Serengeti, and it was amazing. And we were staying in this beautiful big family tent, and we'd had our dinner in the middle of the Serengeti, where you could hear all the noises of the animals around you. And we had that day seen 2 female lions with with a whole raft of cubs, which was an incredible experience. And we walked back from dinner, and it's not late if you're in Africa. You know, you have an early dinner and you have an early night because you're up early to see the animals in the morning. We were walking back to the tent, and the Maasai man had just sort of put us into our tent and, you know, put us in. And he said, all of a sudden he went, oh, Simba, come. And he opened up the tent, and within 200 meters or less of where we were, there was a massive, in fact 20 meters, a massive male lion just standing.
Oh wow, no way,
staring at us.
Just walk past him.
Well, so I said to the Maasai, we've come that way. As from our dinner spot, we've come that way. Did you hear him? Did you sense that he was there? And he said, well, I did think that I had heard him, but I couldn't hear him over the noise of the children.
Oh my goodness.
I was just like, tomorrow, you just tell my children to shut their...
That would have been a shocker. Crikey.
So at that point, we're in our tent, and we're being zipped back up in our tent. And the girls are saying, "You're going to be okay, Mum?" And I was like, "Yeah, fine." And the girls are like, "Yeah, I mean, I imagine lions can't do zips." No, that's very true. They probably can't do zips. So you just go to bed, be fine. And I are lying in this tent, just going, "Oh God."
Oh God.
So we got quite up close and personal with the animals in Tanzania.
Wow.
In Tanzania, we did see all of the animals that you would. I mean, we were incredibly lucky in the Serengeti. We saw everything, and in the Ngorongoro crater, we saw rhinos and cheetahs and a leopard and lions and everything. I mean, yes, Malawi was slightly, I think as well, the season that we went to Malawi was slightly slower in terms of where the animals, but you know, we saw an amazing number of hippos and elephants and giraffes. And
it was April you went, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, people could actually plan this for their Easter holiday, because sometimes
absolutely, it was an incredible time to go. And the beautiful thing about Malawi as well, in terms of doing the sort of trip that we did, that seemed, I think, quite so, you know, with lots of different things, was that you can fly into Blantyre in Malawi, which is the capital, which is kind of say here, and all of these things are just kind of around. So whilst we didn't go back to Blantyre after we left, or until we were going home, you could, so if there was a problem, or if there was any reason to get back to a big hospital or anything like that, you're not actually a significant distance away. And actually, we were literally kind of, around this circle. And Lake Malawi is just one of the most stunning places in the world. I mean, it's incredible. And that's where we got a little boat and went out to this island. But I think now the children are a bit bigger, we could probably have actually kayaked. You can kayak from the mainland out to the island. And
amazing!
The island, and they bring your bags. So
cool.
Yeah, just a really cool place.
So in terms of safety, I'm glad you raised that. Were there any times when you felt unsafe, or what would you say to other families who want to plan this trip? Because sometimes that's something that comes up. Is it safe to go there with kids? You've talked about the hospital being fairly close, so you're not too far away at any point. Yeah. But did you ever feel, any nervous or anything, or did you feel fine the whole time?
Yeah, no, I think one of the main things that I can recommend in Africa, and I think, especially if you have any kind of element of nerves, like, I think some of you will have listened to Jenny's talk, and they're incredibly brave, and they go, they just do all this on their own, and they go off, and they're absolutely fine, and they're very happy with that kind of style of travel. But I think if you're vaguely worried and kind of, a bit concerned about things, the best advice I can give anyone, and what we've done on all of our trips actually, is worked with really good tour operators there, and local people who understand the distances and the times. We went to our first trip to Africa with the children was to Rwanda when they were 6 and 7. And we were going, my husband and I support a charity called Friends of Rwandan Rugby, and they teach thousands and thousands of kids across Rwanda on a budget of about £5,000 a year. It's an amazing charity. And rugby is a post-genocide sport in Rwanda, so there's no tribal allegiances around. So football was quite tribal, which it is here, obviously, with Catholic and Christian kind of, for all that kind of thing. So so rugby is a post-genocide sport. So they teach all these children. So we went to do the rugby tour. We all went as a family. Matt had done the rugby tour before, and we spent time in schools, and we did lots of rugby stuff. But then we wanted to stay for a week afterwards and explore and see the gorillas and take the children around Africa. And the best person we found is a lady called Kat from World Fusion, and she was actually an Australian. And I could speak to her, and I could say, right, what I'm worried about how, we all know in Africa is that it doesn't matter how many miles it is between one place and another place. The issue is, how long is that going to take?
Yeah, the road.
It doesn't really matter whether it's 20 miles or 200 miles. The 20 miles might take longer than the 200 depending on the road. So she knew exactly what I was worried about, and she actually went over and above. I mean, she took our blood groups, she checked our insurance so clearly. She triple checked, all of our kind of, where we were staying, what we were doing. She wanted to make sure that if there was a problem, she could get us back to the capital for any reason whatsoever. So she was aware of where our kind of points were that could make us return. Now, I think possibly that's a little bit over what you might need to do, but what she did for me there with my young children was she made me feel like she had it all in hand. We arrived in country. She gave me a SIM card for my phone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that I could have a Rwandan SIM, and I could always just some really kind of, and so actually when we went to Malawi and Tanzania, we did the same. We got hold of a pay-as-you-go SIM so that we could always have a kind of local phone. And she was really good, and she was somebody that I could talk to about those things. What if this happens? What if that happens? And actually, one of the interesting things about Africa is that if you're following a tourist route, there will very often be big international hotels. The point. And she just said, if you have a problem, you go there. Yeah. You just turn up at said, super swanky American 5-star hotel and say, we've got a problem.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and they will help you because they will.
And it's very rare for anything to go wrong when you're traveling. But it's those concerns, isn't it? You just want to know that if something happens.
And that was the health kind of concerns. I think in Rwanda, we changed our trip. We didn't go and see the monkeys in the forest because with the children. So the children can't come and see the gorillas. You have to be 12 to see the gorillas. So they didn't come to see the gorillas with us. But we didn't take them to see the monkeys because actually the monkeys can jump down from the trees and they could scratch you. And actually, if we had been going to do that, we would have needed to do serious rabies injections before we went. And actually, the rabies injections only give you time to get to a hospital. They don't stop you from getting it. So having had those discussions, we changed our minds about what we were going to do. We decided that we as adults could have done that and taken that risk, but actually we weren't going to take that risk for our young children. But, you know, just gave them the lessons, don't touch dogs, don't touch cats, don't touch any animals that are around, you know, even if they look fine, you know, don't do that. So those were the kind of the health concerns we had. Our children have never had any problems with the malaria tablets. They weren't an issue. We had to take them all 3 times. We just put them in Nutella or any other kind of paste of any description, and they just took them. But they didn't make them poorly. They didn't have any side effects. So sort of once we'd done the first trip, we knew that wasn't a problem. And from a safety point of view, as in an actual physical safety point of view, there was a couple of moments that I had where I thought, oh, what's this? You know, in terms of, there were girls were swimming in Lake Malawi. I was a bit like, we totally sure there's no hippos? Totally? That wasn't, but, you know, and then there was a couple of other moments at a couple of places we stayed where there was some quite loud noises and some quite bangs, and all of a sudden your mind goes into overdrive about what that might be. But actually, when we flew out to Rwanda, lots and lots and lots of people obviously were really worried about us and were kind of, oh, are you sure it's safe? Are you sure it's fine? And actually, we flew out of Manchester, and we were on a huge terrorist threat status the time we flew out. There'd just been the Ariana Grande bomb in Manchester, and Manchester had just, in fact, the UK had gone on to a certain level threat. And actually, I was more worried about going to Manchester Airport at that point. I was actually not worried about Rwanda. Rwanda is incredibly safe and has been for the past 20 years, over 20 years now. A really safe place. And I think it helps that Matt and I have travelled to Africa before. We had the children. I really think that helps. I think it helps that we've done those sorts of trips and had those experiences. I think perhaps if you're brand new to it, any country really, any sort of experience, I think it can be quite overwhelming when you've got younger children with you.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, I mean, you know, I've been to Bangkok a few times over the years, and I don't think anything ever prepares you for your first experience in Bangkok. It's mental, you know, it's kind of so busy and hectic, and people are talking to you and taking you and wanting you to go places.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I know, yeah, exactly. And I remember the first time I went with my husband, and I'd been a couple of times before, and he hadn't been, and he was like, "Whoa!"
Intense.
Once you get into the vibe, you know, it's okay, and you kind of understand what you're doing. And I think Africa is very like that. And so it helps that we'd done it before, but so we could understand perhaps a little bit more for ourselves and our children what we needed to be worried about and what we didn't.
I have another question actually about budgeting, because you said that you normally go with a tourist body who can help you plan your trip. Is there flexibility to then build in a trip which matches your budget? So, for example, I'm a real budget traveller. You mentioned about the tents. I mean, some of those tents are quite expensive, aren't they? The real big safari ones. But is there an option to plan a trip with somebody else, with a tourist company who would do it on more of a budget level for families?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fairness, actually, Jenny was in Malawi at the same time as us, and they were traveling for a lot longer. And they had their tents, I think, if you remember,
Oh yes, on the truck.
Over. So actually, they, in a lot of places that we kind of bumped into them. So we stayed with them in a couple of places, and then in other places they camped and they used the campsites, and they'd planned their trip around Malawi on a fairly similar route to the route that we did, but had actually done that in their tents and had self-driven that trip, rather than we had a driver and we had hotels and sort of accommodation. So it absolutely is possible, and it is, it's just as fun, totally doable, and definitely doable with different levels of accommodation. I think certain places are harder. I think Namibia, in my experience, when I've looked at pricing it up, we went years ago on quite a fancy trip because we'd had a very big trip cancelled to South America because of the 2008 crash. That was eventually not allowed to have the time off work, so we had to cancel a 3-month trip and had a 3-week trip instead to Namibia, and we splashed out on that because we had this 3-month budget that kind of we had to make the best of. And I think Namibia still is either high end or camping. I don't think there's much in the middle, but I don't think that is the same. So our Rwanda trip we did on quite a budget on our middle, on our second week. So we didn't stay at the super swanky 5-star American places that cost £2,000 a night. Didn't camp either. So we kind of stayed at sort of lodges that were probably around about 100-ish for our family, which I think is
that's good for 5.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing about Africa, which is amazing for a family of 5 like mine, is that they do not care about how many children you're going to put in a room.
I want you to get extra beds in, extra mattresses. Yeah,
you're happy, we're happy. Don't worry. It's like, which is great. Actually, there's nothing more frustrating than thinking that's a great place to stay, that's a great price, and then they say, "Oh no, you have to have 2 rooms."
Oh yeah, your budget is doubled, hasn't it, for your accommodation?
Yeah, and I don't need 2 rooms. Everybody sleep, I can sleep in bed. It's fine.
That's a great tip. And actually, that's just moved me on to the next question, which was about additional costs, because you've got a great blog post. Again, I will share the blog post with everybody about costs that you might not consider. So once you've booked your trip, there are things that you need to think about. There's a few, actually. The visas, for example, for actually getting into some of the parks. That was one thing you've mentioned. Tipping as well, some currency to tip. Obviously, you've got your vaccinations, which I don't like going into too much detail because everyone has their own point of view on vaccinations, but there will be some that you probably should have going over there with kids. Your malaria tablets, and the mobile phone, the actual SIM card, which I think is perfect actually to have planned in advance. Which is the best network, and actually turn up and be able to get one, a buy-as-you-go SIM.
Yeah. So, I mean, the other thing that we always do when we go to Africa is that we take almost half a suitcase full of snacks.
Oh, to give out to people?
No, for my
kids. To keep.
In fairness, the other half of the suitcase when we go to Africa, or even a full suitcase, we took a full suitcase to Rwanda, was full of books and pens and
to give out.
Yeah, that was amazing, and we did that. Although interestingly, lots of the countries and lots of the people you speak to will have different opinions about whether you should do that as well. Again, there are companies that provide, that produce pens and pencils and things in country, and so perhaps that the better way to go about it might be to buy them when you're there rather than to bring them. But
the currency and
not kind of not try. I don't want to judge on that because we've definitely taken full. We've done collections in school and taken lots of stuff with us, but
the snacks, Karen.
Snacks.
For you.
So one of the problems, because the children were 6 and 7 when we went to Rwanda, and one of my big concerns was that they may not eat anything. Like Matt and I will eat most things, but actually I was a bit concerned they might not eat anything. We did a lot of conversations around the fact that was definitely chicken curry and not goat curry. We never mentioned the fact that it was goat curry. definitely chicken curry. Especially even though the goat had been outside when we went in to the restaurant. But anyway, loads of snacks, because actually a lot of the journeys are quite long and we don't know how long they're going to take. And there is nothing that we all know more difficult to manage than hungry, tired children. And so if you can just be like, here's another snack.
Yes.
Another snack.
Throw it behind.
And if we get somewhere and they don't want to, you're in the middle of nowhere and they don't want to eat what's been made for one reason or another, if I took pot noodles. They were like my saving grace. So we had some
brilliant,
amazingly long journeys in Tanzania, and we'd stop off and they'd bring out a picnic. And from my point of view, the picnic was absolutely gorgeous, lots of lovely things in it. But often there was just a bit of things that they wouldn't have. And so they could ask wherever we were, even if we were somewhere that the driver we were with didn't particularly think was great. He could ask them, he would give them a bottle of water and ask them to boil it, and then we could make pot noodles.
Great top tip.
I know seems crazy, but actually,
yes,
it just dealt with something that we didn't have to then didn't have to.
Well, it takes away that anxiety, because I know that my son gets very hangry, and so you get that point where you're like, oh God, I know that I need to get him some food, otherwise it's all going to kick off. So if you've got your pot noodle ready, it's perfect. My son loves pot noodles, so I will take that advice when I go. Great tip. And they don't weigh much either.
They don't weigh much. They're a bit bulky, but you usually have luggage on an international flight, so you're okay.
Great tip. Right, let's move on to your book then, Karen, because you've got two, haven't you? This is the first one. Hang on, let me get my camera angle.
Yeah, this is the first one, and the second one is available on pre-order at the moment, so it's going to be available to actually send out to people mid-October.
Right, so we'll just have a chat about this, because this is a great book, because not only is it sort of an adventure story and involves a lot of travel, which I was going to ask you, are these about any places that you've been? Have you been to all the places in the book?
Been to most of the places, but no, they were more just kind of key places in France rather than sort of definitely places that we knew and loved kind of thing. So it obviously starts in Paris, because this one's France, yeah. And
it's just beautifully written, because it's actually really not, my son hasn't read this, I have to say, otherwise it would be covered in chocolate fingerprints, so I'm sending this out to somebody. But I just picked out some bits, because actually it's got the lovely storyline to it, but then also there's the educational element, but it's not in a way that a child would really notice. So it's like learning about historical facts and learning the language of the country that the adventure's set in. So obviously this is French. And what I love about it, as I am so rubbish with languages, is it teaches you a phrase or a word, and then actually tells you how to say it phonetically, which is perfect. Like, for example, I'm not going to get my camera here. Cetacea. I'm not going to do it right myself, but it just tells you how to pronounce it, explains what it's about. And then, there's all sorts of little bits that I learned actually going through this book. Here we has different things about the food, fun facts about the food. And then another little bit that I liked here at the end, where it has the facts. So actually, when you get to the end of the book, not only have you read a beautiful story, but you also learned something along the way. And I think that was the key element, wasn't it? Because you've written it was.
Yeah, I think I've read so many books with my children about fairies, and that I just lost the will to live, really, in terms of the fact that there wasn't really anything happening, and they were all a very similar format. Rainbow fairies, for any of you who have similar aged children, fine. And we just talked about, I've teamed up with Lindsay, who's an educational consultant, so that this is designed for Key Stage 2 children, so usually 8 to 12, but actually anywhere, I've got lots of readers who are 6 and 7 as well, and reading it with their parents. I've had some brilliant feedback from schools about it, and lots of teachers are reading it in school with their classes, and it's a really great way of doing modern languages in school in an accessible way. And they're reading it out at like the end of lessons and sort of suggesting to the children, and the children are delighted. I had a lovely email yesterday from somebody who just said that she's never read a book to her class where everybody is so engaged and watching and listening.
Oh, lovely.
they're waiting for the words, and they want to, that she reads out the French word, and then they're all trying to guess what the English is. So it was a really, really lovely email, and really, really nice. So we had such nice feedback that the Spanish one is coming out this year. I mean, we would love to do a book for everywhere, but we'll just sort of see how sales go. So it's a great Christmas present.
We will put a link up for this. And also, if you're watching this on replay, please put hello in the comments, and I will choose someone from the comments list and post this out to you. So you will have a book for your child. And I was going to say something else, and it's just totally popped out of my head. Oh, I know what I was going to say, because on your website, you've also got the additional material that goes with the book, the downloadables. So you can, so the kids actually, they can draw the pictures and actually, you know, create their own stories and pictures around the book as well. So that's lovely. Nice little touch.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't even know how long we've been chatting for. Oh my goodness, we've been chatting for ages. I need to have a clock up so I can see it.
I was going to say, I can talk about Africa and travel forever.
I'm going to be sharing all your links. So I'll probably put a fresh post up so that people can link to all of the things that we've chatted about today. And it's lovely meeting you and finding out about your trip.
Really lovely. And hopefully we've inspired you to go to Africa.
Definitely. And I'm sure lots of other people watching this. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you soon.
See you soon. Lovely.